The Guardians started a challenging 13 games in 13-day stretch. The upside of having a game the next day is you get to wash the ugly taste of a clunker out of your mouth. For the Guardians, they need to flush Sunday's game down the drain as quickly as possible.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the old saying is you don't want an off day when you're hot, but maybe you want one when you're not so hot. The Guardians not so hot on Sunday, but quite frankly, I don't know if I could let that game stew another day without getting into a new one to talk to. I hope the Guardians feel the same way. We feel the same way about you wanting to be here on a bit of a Monday morning therapy edition of Locked On Guardians. This is the Locked On Guardians podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we cover your team every day. The Cleveland Guardians, from the majors to the minors and the draft, all things in between. We touch on it all every day here on the podcast. I am Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts. I have been watching Cleveland Guardians baseball my entire life. Hard to find a game as sloppy as Sundays in that memory of mine, but I have been covering their minor league system since 2007. You can read my minor league analysis at nextyearincleveland.substack.com, the News Herald, the Morning Journal. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Jeff Ellis, all 5 days of the week, good or bad. Some days are bad for me.
Yeah, it was a little bit sloppy today. Watch out. The slop is catching is what I was showing you, Justin, about both for us and for the Guardians. For those who do not know me, this could be your first podcast. Before I do that, I do want to say thank you to all of our everydayers out there. John Fagan still leads the everydayers in YouTube comments. YouTube lets me know who's doing that, so shout out to John. But in terms of myself, it could be someone's first podcast. I know intros aren't everyone's favorite, but I am a longtime prospect and draft guy. I was at Scouting 24/7, where I had a national gig. Before Locked On decided they wanted to bring me in and the first 10 people to talk about baseball. I still don't know why, but hey, I was one of them, and here I am nearly 1,500 episodes later. So maybe it's just because of longevity. They knew that I could I could stand up to the wear and tear, unlike this Guardians bullpen and pitching staff in general.
Are you the Carlos Santana of Locked On podcast?
I might just be.
You haven't left, but you're close to it. On today's Monday morning therapy edition, usually it's Monday morning headlines, but it'll be Monday morning therapy here for most of our listeners. We're going to talk about the Guardians' sloppy play on Sunday, what happened, why that's been happening more this year, and if we should be concerned or if they're ready to turn the page. We'll talk about how the Guardians' depth is already being tested, at least in the stretch and overall right now, and that includes guys on the team and injured guys in the minors. We'll get into all that. And we'll talk about the Twin Series ahead, expectations for that, and how quickly the Guardians need to move on from whatever happened on Sunday. Before we get there, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate subscription, and compatible controller required. The Guardians and clean defense, anything positive on Sunday? Not anything. I guess there were some positive things. Most of that not compatible for baseball on Sunday's game for the Guardians. I was trying to rack my brain, Jeff, about the last game I can recall being so disgusted watching. And I don't want to say disgusted, but just like, it was just very foul play. Like everything was bad, right? Like Logan Allen probably wasn't as bad as the line showed, but he wasn't great either. Defense was just horrid all the way around. Starting pitching, honestly, all weekend was pretty ugly for the most part. Ben Lively gave you enough on Saturday in game one, but it was a rocky start. And the hitting on Sunday wasn't awful. They didn't really come up with a whole lot of runs. There were some hard hit balls on Sunday that didn't go their way. But overall, it just got very out of hand quickly. And yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe I have a short memory, but I'm trying to think of a game in recent memory that I've watched for the Guardians where I'm like, wow, this is just offensive. It was just a very bad game. Like bad things kept happening, and it was all things they did to shoot themselves in the foot. Like, do you recall a game in recent memory where you can compare that to? Because I really can't.
I probably feel like it would be is one where they actually had less offense in this. It's weird. Every single player who came up to bat, who was a starter, I should say, because not counting Noel, reached base except for Rocchio, and multiple guys reached base multiple times. They should have been in line for closer to 4 runs, especially because they had a lot of extra base hits in this one, like Naylor, Kwan, Jones's home run. They had a lot of actually positive off. Like that's the that's my biggest positivity in this game is offensively. They actually had a solid game. The problem was like the base running. Like I was telling Justin off air, like I'm to the point where I think they need to not have a permanent green light for everyone. There's just got to be a point where you sit down and explain, like, Rookie and Naylor, you guys might have stolen bases on the minors. The minors are different than the majors. You just don't have the foot speed. They're not. And listen, Jose doesn't have great foot speed either, but Jose is like top first percentile in terms of smarts and base running. Like he's closer to an average runner, but he gets it done because of between the ears and instincts and everything else. The fielding, 4 errors, like in that being sloppy. The pitching wasn't great. No one really stepped up. You know, in my now I said it's a bad sign when the highlight of your game is Austin Hedges getting a umpire assisted strikeout, because strike 2 was definitely, and strike 1 may not have been in the zone either to Rafael. The Endeavors had to laugh at it. Yeah, I'll say like for all the sloppiness, but that's the problem, right? Like Bo Naylor ran him out of an inning. Who knows? What after that, Will Wilson had a single on the infield that probably would have scored him. And I'm not saying that turns the whole game, but you never know. Like this was a game where they had the chances to do stuff. And I also don't want to sit here and take one bad weekend. They're 8-1 in opening games to start the season. They've played 9 series. They've won 5 of them. It was a bad weekend. It's been a very doomy and gloomy season in the comments and on my Twitter profile. So it's really hard for me to guess like what the general feel is. People just seem to be waiting for the sky to fall, and this was a weekend that's going to make people feel like the sky has fallen. But yeah, they're terrible in doubleheaders for Eons, and I'm just kind of like looking at this whole weekend series, and as Justin said, I'm ready to flush it and move on, and hopefully they'll continue their dominance of the Twins. But our job is to talk about it. So when you're looking through this entire weekend, Quan continued to hit. Jones had some positive signs of life. There's some positivity in, especially Sunday's game being like one of the worst things I can recall in a very long time.
Yeah, it was bad. Like you said, every which way it went bad. I mean, yeah, Bo Naylor's base running was bad. He got baited into a throw to second base, then a double steal, and then Sheeman's throw home was bad. So like those are mental errors. This year. Yeah, and that's a mental error. Nolan Jones lost the ball in the sun. That's not necessarily like that happens, but it's not. I don't want to call it a mental error, but it was just a compounding thing of all the things that happened, right? And Will Wilson's error, Angel Martinez, like they've had issues with cutoff throws, which Santana's job was to cover that there, and it was a little bit of a high throw, but those are just like things that were a little bit tighter a year ago. And we made the joke a few weeks ago about like it's been, I forget how long it's been already, because we're already 26 games into the season or whatever it is. Yeah. We joked about it's been 0 days since the last error, last incident, right? And I guess we're back to 0 on that. I don't know what we got up to. Things have gotten a little cleaner. Like in that first few weeks of the season, we kept talking about what is it going to look like to turn it around? Like what's got to be improved quickly. And it was the defense, right? It was the mental errors they were making. And they had somewhat curbed those for a while. And they obviously been playing better. They won the Pirates series. They won the Yankees series. They've won, what'd you say? They've only lost 2 or 3? They lost the Angels. They lost the Padres series.
They're 5-4. 5-4 in 9 series. They lost the Padres, they lost the Angels, they lost the Baltimore series, and now they've lost Boston.
Yeah, so that's 4 series losses. And they just won 2 in a row. We talked about last week they beat the Pirates, and we said, well, don't discredit that because the Pirates have good pitching.
They beat schemes. That's not easy.
Yeah, if the Pirates had better hitting, maybe they would have lost that series. I don't know. And then you beat the Yankees, who, you didn't see Max Fried. That's a bummer. You lost to Carlos Rodon, but you took 2 or 3. You can't dictate when you're going to face a team, right? You can't. You play the schedule. It's on the paper, and you can't dictate who's healthy, who you're facing, how they're playing. All you can do is control what you're doing and who's on your field. For the Guardians, they did pretty well with all those things against the Pirates and the Yankees for the most part. You're not going to sweep every series. So they won 2 out of 3 against the Yankees. This one, they lost 2 out of 3. But, they had a lot of self-inflicted wounds on Sunday. In game 2 was also self-inflicted because they just didn't have
starting
starter. They didn't have starting pitching that was ready to give them a chance, unfortunately. Like as high as I've been on Doug Nikhazy in the past, I've hit more of a realization with him. And it's his first big league start. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, he's terrible. That's what's going to happen. He's going to walk 6 guys in every start. He's never going to be good. I'm not going to say that. But I mean, there's clearly still some issues to work through with him. And it was a situation where they didn't necessarily have to start Doug in that game. We'll talk about that in the second segment. They didn't necessarily have to start Doug in that game, but they chose to for a reason, which we'll get into. But yeah, you want to move on from this. Like, they've played better baseball lately. This was a very bad game, and they even said, like, this is not indicative of who we are. But the question I really have about that, Jeff, is like, how did this start to pop up? Because last year we talked about how this team was, very efficient. They were very clean. They had to win on the margins, right? You have to play smart baseball. They always talk about guards ball being a brand of baseball where they play good defense. They run the bases well. They cause chaos. And, again, they have kind of eliminated some of that for a while, but this was a sloppy game, and they aren't a good base running team this year. The numbers show that. They aren't a great defensive team based on statistics either. So, like, there are some areas where they just have not kept up the same pace as a year ago. And I feel like those are controllable things. Like, errors are going to happen. You're not going to play perfect and clean baseball. Every team has a game like the Guardians did on Sunday, and that's fine. But you want to be a little bit tighter and eliminate those things as much as possible. It just felt like last year things were much cleaner and more smooth overall. More, they kept things running better. And this year it just feels like things are a little bit more loose and sloppy. And I don't really have a good explanation for why that is. I know it's our job to try to explain it, but I don't have it because, maybe it's just a case of baseball. You can do the right thing and bad things still happen because that's just baseball. But it's not like they're not working, right? They're not out there being lazier, and they haven't really changed a whole lot of personnel. Obviously they lost Andres Gimenez, but second base defense isn't why they lost this game. They didn't lose the game because of first base defense. Like, it's other positions that have been here before. It's Naylor and Rocchio and Angel Martinez, who is probably the best center fielder on this team as far as defense is concerned.
I do have a theory on that. When we come back from our first break, I think I can explain some of why I think there's a little bit more sloppiness.
All right, we'll get into the Guardians' weird play this season, more issues with defense and cleanliness overall. We'll talk about the depth, some of the decisions the Guardians made with pitching over the weekend and where they're at with depth on the pitching staff, as well as the position player side. There are some issues going on there. And then later in today's show, we'll also get into the upcoming Twin Series, which is an important one for the Guardians. So stick around for more of that on today's Locked On Guardians.
The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Can I use a baseball expression there? I'm going to. FanDuel is now giving new customers an incredible way to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Now, here's where I have to give you the inside dope on this. FanDuel is always our sponsor. We love that they're with us all year. 250 is as big as they ever give. If you're waiting to join FanDuel, now is the time, because you're never going to see more than a $250 bonus. This is the high point of bonuses. This is the most you can get. Now is the perfect time, and they make it so easy, from 3 points to steals to assists. They have so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, you can. Here's what I love. I love things that make it easy. I am a parent. I have multiple jobs. Make it easy. FanDuel makes it easy. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
All right, Jeff, give us your theory on the Cleveland Guardians and their sloppy play this season, or at least on Sunday.
I think so. I've got kind of a 3-point plan to this. 1 point is I do think there's a little bit of a playoff layover. I think we sometimes see that with some teams, but I think the other thing is this team isn't as well defined as they were a year ago. If we're being very honest, there's been a lot more in and out, a lot more changes, a lot more injuries, and they've not had stability as a team. I say what you want to say about Andres Gimenez. Dude was an Iron Man at second base. Like, we can talk about defense or not, but you always had him there. They weren't even sure who was going to be the second baseman for a long time. Naylor was in and out at first base because of his own set of injuries. Jose, we don't know if that wrist is still hurting him. We don't know if that's still affecting him defensively. And I don't know. Rocchio, I want to give him till the end of May before I make a final decision, but I'm not trending towards believing he is a central piece of this team. For me, it's a lot of the uncertainty. It's a lot of the expectation is not, they went out and got Nolan Jones, a week before the season began. Their center fielder is currently on the DL. Their second baseman is currently on the DL. Lack of consistency. And they've had a lot of guys who are kind of coming up and trying to slot into roles, and that can it's led to some positive stuff, but can also lead to not having communication. Like Martinez and Jones nearly like decapitating each other by running into each other in the outfield. I know it's the center fielder's call, but Jones has the better arm and had a better angle on a throw to third. Like I would just, it's hard to pull off. They got to work on communication. They got to, figure some things out. But I do think there's a degree of the fact that there's been so much uncertainty throughout the season, and then we're seeing it in player performance. And this is where the coaching staff has to step up. Like to me, there's, you can't make Nolan Jones strike out less. You can't make, Angel Martinez. Well, he's been great. I don't have a real knock there, but you can't make Rocchio gain foot speed. But the coaching staff has to be there to work on the things because communication's an issue. Making sure, like, why didn't Rocchio cover? Like, second, like, why is every single game we have a talk about Brian Rocchio not doing the correct thing when he's the professor? Like, Santana, play further in so you don't have to jump a foot in the air to try to catch Martinez's ball. Like, he's a great defender. I don't know why. Maybe he's just. There's so many little silly things, and that's to me where the coaching staff needs to be there.
Yeah, I'm sure they're working on things. You're right. There is probably a situation like gelling and playing off each other because there are some moving pieces in the lineup now. I mean, you're moving, Gabriel Arias from at second base, and some days he's playing third. And I'm not saying you don't want to, like, last year versatility was such a big deal on this team for the most part, right? You had a lot of flexibility. And they want to maintain that. That's a margin the Cleveland Guardians have to win on. You have to have flexibility. You have to have adaptability and versatility, all the utilities. I guess the downside of moving some pieces around the chessboard, as it were, putting Angel in center or putting him in second base or Arias or Schneemann playing, right? I guess that some of those moving parts sometimes because these guys haven't all played together before, you get issues like that. So I guess I can see that as being an issue. I don't think it's a work thing because the one thing they focused on last year was how they were out taking defense every single day before the game. They were putting an extra work on defense. So maybe it is just a thing of gelling and all that kind of stuff. But the depth thing is a, this does go back to depth because you are moving guys around. Lane Thomas, I don't think Lane Thomas is a better defender than Angel Martinez, but he's out right now, and he's a big piece of what you were supposed to do this year. Hopefully he's okay, and he'll come back just fine. Hopefully Gabriel Arias is going to be fine. I mean, he has to be fine because Juan Brito's now out. Like, Juan Brito is going to be out at least till the All-Star break at this point. I'm talking like in 12 weeks. We're talking 8 to 12 weeks. So it's already the end of April here we're talking, and this really stinks because even, and you're sitting there saying, well, we have to wait another month on Rocchio because it does seem like every other game we're talking about Rocchio making a base running error or making a defensive error. And it's just, I don't know how many more chances you can give that guy. But at the same time, who else are you going to play? Because Juan Brito is now out. The option would have been, okay, we can move Gabriel Arias to shortstop and put Juan Brito at second base. But now then you're saying, okay, we have to put Arias back at short after we just got him settled at second base. And he's playing the best baseball of his life. And then inserting Juan Brito, who's also, by the way, not a good defender. That's not going to help you there. Yeah. But now Juan Brito is hurt, and you hope Gabriel Arias isn't hurt because he has been a key piece of this team with offense and defense at second base. And he's one of the guys who is not making mental errors a lot of games.
Occasionally. He's not, but better than a year ago for certain.
Yeah, this is the best stretch of baseball he's played since we've seen him come up. So he better be okay. He was dealing with that hip. They called it just like hip discomfort, and he came out of the game on game 2 of Saturday, and he didn't play Sunday. Hopefully he'll be back on Monday. They need him now because you don't have Juan Brito. And, the other side of the Juan Brito thing here that stinks is, could he have been like a trade asset? And I guess he still could be, but like, now he's going to miss time. And it's like, that's, I don't know if the injury necessarily changes his trade value, and hopefully he'll be back in time to be around that time if you want to use him that way. But now he's not an option for you if someone gets hurt, and he's not an option for you if someone underperforms like Arias or like Rocchio the way he's doing. Now you're stuck there, and it's Will Wilson. Now it's Daniel Schneemann, and there's really nobody else coming from AAA offensively to help you. And then on the pitching side of things in this series, Duck Nikhazy clearly wasn't ready. Like, there's still control issues there. And they went to him because they have this 13-game and 13-day stretch, right? And they pushed everybody back a day. They pushed Gavin back to Monday. They pushed Tanner back to Tuesday instead of pitching those guys in the doubleheader because you figure we're going to need these guys. And they did push their starters hard all the last week or so. They've been pushing guys to 105 pitches. They've been pushing them a little bit longer to save the bullpen because the bullpen is also short. Like, depth right now on every part of this team, from position players to starting pitching to bullpen, is all being tested very early. Now, hopefully guys coming back like Bieber, like Slade Ciccone and Nick Enright and hopefully Brito will be back. Hopefully those things will shore up on their own as the summer comes along. But right now, depth everywhere on this team is definitely showing it's an issue.
100%. And God, this is why in the offseason I was all about trying to sign Ha-Seong Kim. It's like he was insurance for everything. And that's why I felt like they still needed infielder insurance.
Well, he's still not playing himself.
I know. It wouldn't help now, but it's like, it's still the point where, like, if Rocchio doesn't work out, and it's the problem right now where it's like we're saying he's making all these defensive miscues. That's his strength. He's giving you nothing offensively most nights. So it's even more. And I don't know what the easy answer is, because there isn't one, because the depth hasn't been there. One of the things we were talking about off air very quickly here is they haven't had a lot of discoveries. Like, as a team, their scouting discoveries, their draft, most of their top prospects, most of the guys in the majors are top 3 rounds or big money guys. The Tanner was not, right? Jose was not. Like, this team's backbone has been built off of guys who are not that. So they kind of need to get back to finance of guys, doing some, digging. Hopefully someone's going to jump up and pop. That it's not Parker Messick, because he was a second rounder, but maybe it could be, why am I blanking on the guy we always Peterson, right? I'm having Austin Peterson.
Yeah.
You're banking on a few of those guys, hopefully stepping up this year, but it's also a few drafts in there that were not very good. And now AAA is kind of filled with also Rans, and they kind of have to make do with what they have. And hopefully, some of these guys will step up. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more when we come back from break, because we have so much depth in terms of the lack of depth.
Yes, there is a lot to talk about. We haven't talked about Kolby Allard yet. We haven't talked about other injuries that are floating out there as well, and how the Guardians are going to turn things around very quickly against the Twins. That is coming up on today's Locked On Guardians. The Guardians are finishing up their homestand against the Twins this weekend. There is nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of ballpark food. Hot dogs, peanuts, popcorn. I love all that stuff. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Last minute deals, all in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee. Game Time, we know, takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. And we also know ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer. So you can score incredible deals with Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On. And with the Guardians regular season here, I can count on them to help me grab tickets to all the games that meet my needs. Going to be some good weather this week. Maybe you want to go to a game. Maybe you're waiting until the last minute to decide exactly what your plans are. That's perfect for game night. Check the weather. Check the prices closer to first pitch. You can get a really great deal. You get the all-in pricing, so you know exactly what your final cost is going to be. There's no surprise checkout fees like there is on a lot of other places in general, which we don't like these days. And that is how Game Time is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and you're going to use our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So if you haven't used it yet, do it now. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. Please help us out. If you like what you're hearing, by auto-downloading on all your favorite audio platforms you're listening on, hit the bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, never miss a reaction video, never miss any other kind of bonus videos. And then if you like what you're hearing, join the Insiders group. We're texting our insiders during games, when big moves happen, other rumors are going around. We're doing bonus content, occasional extra episodes, monthly fan, virtual meetups, all that kind of stuff. Jeff's got some draft data out there. I've got my prospect handbook in there for all the insiders. Join subtext.com/LockedOnGuardians to join that group. All right, Kolby Allard. Before we get into the Twins stuff real quick, great performance by him. He saved the bullpen. I thought, You're on mute, Jeff, so that's okay. I guess you don't really care about Kolby Allard. If the Guardians had won on Sunday, you could point back and say Kolby Allard pitching on Saturday with giving them length behind Doug Nikhazy could have been a big key to that, because you didn't have to use any other relievers on Saturday night in game 2 after a doubleheader game 1 win, where you did use Gaddis, Heron, and Smith in Class A, which we didn't even talk about Class A today. We will maybe tomorrow a little bit. But the fact that you needed to use Kolby Allard on April 27th, like, he wasn't on the 40-man roster, didn't make the team out of spring training. We thought maybe he would have. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying he's like a break glass in case of emergency guy, but they've already had to dive into moves off the 40-man to start the season, because of guys that are hurt. I don't necessarily love that. Thank goodness he did. Here's the other issue I have too, and I'm not a manager. This is why we're podcasters and not coaching in baseball. And this is something the Guardians have to do. I'm going to acknowledge this. The Guardians have to do this in a lot of ways. And I know someone's going to make a comment about payroll based on this, but Stephen Vogt had a quote about, we didn't necessarily want to send Kolby Allard back down after his great performance, because that's not fair to him. He saved the bullpen. He stepped up for them in a time they needed it. So he's like, we don't want to punish him for that. But at the same time, this is the major leagues. You're trying to win, and you're trying to have guys available for that day. Kolby Allard can't pitch for 3 or 4 days because he threw basically an entire start for you out of the bullpen. So I understand, like, you don't want to punish guys, you want to reward them, and you have to be good to the players you bring in like this because of your, it's a payroll thing. Like, this is the culture they have. You have to have a good culture here. That's what attracts guys to Cleveland. So I understand you don't want to punish him by, saying, well, thanks for throwing 6 innings. You're back to AAA, because it's a numbers game. But it is a numbers game. It's a business. And you tell him, hey, you'll be back. You're on the 40-man roster. I don't. It's a fine line. Again, this is why we're not managers. We're podcasters. It's a very fine line to deal with that kind of thing versus, making sure a guy feels appreciated versus we have to put the best team on the field every day. And he's unavailable for a couple of days. You know what I mean?
Yes, but I think that
although I don't know who you would have brought up in his stead. I really don't know. So maybe it didn't matter.
Here's the thing. I think we've seen a lot of double talk from Vogt this year, where I don't necessarily trust the words coming out of his mouth. And I don't think it was necessarily anything about loyalty. It's a great thing to say. He doesn't have options. If they want to send him down, he's got to clear waivers. You have to cut him.
Is Kolby out of options?
Yes.
Okay. So
I think they want him to be the long man. I think it stinks that he isn't available, because he pitched great. Like, he was the star of the game for me this week. Juan was every single game the star of the game, but Kolby Allard is out of options. So he says this great, nice thing. But, we also heard him talk, and except we don't have time for today about Class A. We heard him talk about the whole, like, Class A save situation, and his words don't match up with what's happening on the field. So Vogt is not, he's a non-reliable narrator right now for us. We're trying to interpret. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a great manager, but this felt like just nice words to say. You can't send him down because, and I always thought he would make this team in a spring training. I thought he was a good choice to be the long man. He was that for Philadelphia for points last year and successful in that role for a team that was a World Series contender. So I think this is more like, he's not available, but he gives you depth. And I mean, honestly, at some point we talk about the lack of depth. You kind of want Kolby Allard here, because maybe this opens up, if some of these guys struggle, that maybe we try Junis as a starter. Maybe we move Cantillo to that role. Like, it gives you a way to keep some of the long men in the pen and use, because right now one of the reasons they don't have depth is they took 2 of their potential starters and made them relievers. If you flip it around, then all of a sudden their depth's looking a little bit better. And frankly, right now, I know Cantillo wasn't great on Sunday, but it's like I still would rather see him, I think, than Nikhazy. And Junis was a starter a year ago at points, so he has been one recently. So I think for me, this is just, I think he's worth keeping. I think he's kept here because you don't want to expose him to waivers, whether or not he could pitch. He's a lefty, and there's always a chance someone's going to claim a lefty.
Yeah, and pitching is thin everywhere. To be honest, for April, it's very thin everywhere, which is crazy to me. But that's where baseball kind of is right now. I mean, the Dodgers just lost Tyler Glass now, probably because he's out with the shoulder injury. Yeah, absolutely. And Allard saved the bullpen. So, all those guys that pitched on Saturday in game 1, they didn't pitch on Sunday. So they're available to start the Twin Series. And it is a 13-game and 13-day stretch. You need to have guys rested. You can't use them every single day. So that wasn't important. And yeah, he's going to have to be able to come back in a couple days and try to do it again, or be available just in case you do it again. Guardians and Twins come this week. This is a big series because you don't want the Twins to feel better about themselves. They did just sweep the Angels, who I'm going to continue to say, I'm sorry, I don't buy the Angels as a good team. I just don't. The Guardians are still, the Guardians are still not a bad team. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom. I know we've had some negative takes on this one on today too. The Guardians are still not a bad team. They're still a team trying to find their footing and some consistency. They've done some good things this year. There have been some sloppy things, as we talked about. Jeff talked about why. I thought, Jeff, your point was really good about the constant fluctuation of the roster is a big piece of that. But you do have a Twins team that did sweep the Angels, so they're kind of climbing out of where they were. They might be getting a little bit healthier here. You know, Rice Lewis is rehabbing. They got some guys back off the IL. You do have Gavin. You do have Tanner. They got an extra day of rest, which I think is good because you do want to win this series. You could take 2 out of 4 and still feel good, I guess, but I'd like to see 3 out of 4. It's tough. You do have Gavin and Tanner. They are, like you said, 8-1 to start series. That's good. You want to start today off with a good start to the series. You got Ortiz against Pablo Lopez, so you're getting, you can't avoid anybody in the rotation for the Twins because you're gonna miss Joe Ryan, which is good because Joe Ryan I think has been their best pitcher this year. So that's a good thing. But yeah, you're gonna be facing a Twins team that is trying to climb out of a little bit of a hole. They did just sweep a series, and there were some hitters on Boston we talked about on Friday that were not hitting all that great, and now some of them are leaving Cleveland feeling better. You don't want the Twins to do that either. So definitely important to win tonight. Definitely important to clean up the sloppy play. Like you said, maybe you start limiting some guys stealing bases. And I know this team is just not a base running team right now. They're not. So you can't run into extra outs. You've got to do everything you can to clean things up and get this series off on a good note. Try to take the first 2, and then Chris Paddock's not great. He's in game 2, and then see where things go from there.
Yeah, just real quick note of they won 5-0 on Sunday. Joe Ryan went 7 innings with 11 strikeouts, so good to miss him. Other thing is the lineup they presented had exactly 2 hitters with an OPS over 700, Larnach and Bader. Everyone else was sub. So it's still a team that's struggling. And the series before this, which allowed them to get on track, was facing the Chicago White Sox. Well, that'll always cure
themselves.
That'll always cure what ails you. What doesn't ail us is all of our everydayers. Thank you all for joining us. And every single day, win, lose, or draw. I know it is harder after weekends like this, but we appreciate you. Thank you all. And go Guardians, go.